It is a requirement every year for us to go over 504s. 504 is a part of the Rehabilitation Act. It is not the same thing as IDEA, which is where IEPs come from. And so please make sure you sign the paper in the mailroom that says that we've gone over 504s and that you've been trained on it. So what is Section 504? 504 is a part, like I said, of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It prohibits discrimination against persons on the basis of their disability. And so as it refers to students, is to assure that disabled students have educational opportunities and benefits equal to those provided to non-disabled students. So in Rock Hill schools, we must provide protection and accommodations necessary to ensure that eligible students have equal access to services, programs, or activities offered by our schools. So what is 504 and what is it not? Section 504 plan is a formal plan which outlines what a school will do to address disability-related deficits. It's a plan which is designed to level the playing field for the student. It's a legal document which is monitored by the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights in Washington, D.C. What is it not? Section 504 is not a part of special ed. We'll talk about that in just a second. It's not a tool to maximize performance. So we're not going to give a student a 504 because they made an 89, but their parent thought they should make an A. It's not meant to written to satisfy a parent, and it's also not written because there's a fear the student won't do well in middle school or high school. There has to be actual evidence that the student's not doing or substantially impacted and then needs a 504. It is not special education. It's a general education responsibility. As a result, the only way that I think that really will impact most of us is in regards to the testing room. ESE, the Exceptional Student Education Department, has a testing room available. Unfortunately, for 504 students, the only ones that can go there are ones that have oral accommodations. Those students that have alternate location or small group, those need to be taken care of by the general education teacher. And so one easy way to do that is if a student has small group, please allow them to go maybe into one of your neighbor's rooms that has planning, let them take their test there. And if you need help finding a location, please let me know and I can help facilitate that. But for those couple reasons, they're not allowed to go to the testing room. The only ones allowed to go to the testing room are ones that have oral accommodations. Students can't have both an IEP and a 504, and each school has to have a building level 504 coordinator, which is me. My roles and responsibilities are all the things listed here. Basically, I do everything in regards to 504s. I provide guidance, I answer questions from every group of people. I also schedule and lead meetings. I collect data for those meetings, and I maintain all the files for it as well and coordinate with the district office. You will probably ask to serve on a 504 team at some point this year. 504 teams have to have at least 3 people on them, and one of those 3 has to always be a regular education teacher. So usually what I'll do is I'll send my invitations out through Outlook. So if you get an invitation, please let me know if you can serve on the team or can't serve on the team, so that if you can, I can find someone else. And so these are all the people who are part of those meetings. A 504 referral can come from basically anyone, any person that knows the student, parent, guardian, an adult student, school staff. We've gone through that process, I think, from all of those groups of people. We've had guidance counselors recommend people, we've had teachers recommend, we've had parents, and even had some students come and say they need it as well. Anyone who believes a student has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, life activities would be like learning or concentrating or something like that. A student should not go through the RTI process if they're being referred for a 504. When should a school refer? When someone thinks a student has a physical or mental disability that substantially limits one or more life functions. Like if the student, a lot of times the student will get a doctor's note and the doctor will say the student needs a 504 plan or need accommodations. In that case, if you ever hear that, please let me know. If a student has a serious illness or injury, that could be another good reason. If the student is suspected of having an impairment, like you suspect a student might have ADHD, that could also be a reason. Or if the student has signs of chronic health problem and has a lot of absences related to that illness. So if you're part of that team, I'll probably ask you to come with some data, come with some grades, come with some attendance information, And I might even ask you to fill out a form in preparation for that. Even if you're not the person on that team, I still might have you fill out that form so that we have good data when we're trying to make a decision on whether the disability substantially impacts the student. There's a 3-part process to eligibility determination. Does the student have a physical or mental impairment? Does the physical or mental impairment affect one or more life activities? And then, does that physical or mental impairment substantially limit as compared to the average student? There are some different options that we have as a 504 team. The student can be determined to be eligible for a 504 plan, and then we have to decide if they're going to have a plan or not. And there's a document we use in Enrich to do that. If we find that the student's not eligible, we just have to make sure we explain to the parent why that student is not eligible. And one good thing to know is just because we say no on one particular day doesn't mean that we're going to say no later. There could be something that happens in a few weeks that causes us to realize, hey, they are substantially limited. So it doesn't always mean no is not a final decision. Students can be found eligible with a plan, and that means that we'll say they're eligible, they're substantially impacted, and then we will create an accommodation plan to address that disability. We can also say, and we've done this a couple times, eligible with no plan. We can say that the student is eligible, but they don't actually need an accommodation plan. They're either in remission or there's mitigating measures which are helping that student be successful, and so they really don't need a plan. Anyone who comes in contact with a student that has a 504 plan should receive a copy of their accommodations. So if you look in PowerSchool and you see like the little triangle and you click on it and it says 504 plan and you have not received accommodations, then please let me know, although you should have all received accommodations at this point. And as schedules change throughout the year, then new teachers should also receive a copy of those accommodations. And we try to do a pretty good job of making sure that happens. Please don't ever tell a parent these things. Never tell a parent their child won't or will qualify. That's a team decision. Don't tell a parent to put their child on medication. Don't tell them they must have a medical statement in order to schedule a meeting. And don't tell them that a child cannot have an accommodation because Section 504 is unfunded. So in Rock Hill, our policy, all students who are 504 eligible with or without a plan will have an annual review each year. So that means of our 80-something students have 504s, we'll have a meeting every single year for those students. And then we'll even have 3-year reevals for students who have gotten to 3 years. Basically, anytime we make even a minor change to that 504 accommodation, we have to have a meeting to decide it. It can't just be me deciding or the teacher deciding or the parent deciding. It has to be a team decision. So let's test your knowledge a little bit. Let's compare IDEA versus Section 504. In IDEA, students must have a disability that falls into a defined qualifying area and adversely affect educational performance. They must need specially designed instruction. It requires a comprehensive eval, including screening, psycho-educational eval, and intervention data. Criteria of exclusion and we have to narrow eligibility. It works well with RTI. They have defined IEP team members. You have to have parent consent. There are strict and specific timelines, and a complaint equals a due process hearing. And there is funding from the national government. As opposed to Section 504, students must have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits the life function. It prevents discrimination, ensures equal access with accommodations and services. It requires relevant information from a variety of sources. It's a lot more broad and does not necessarily work well with RTI. It's decisions by a group of knowledgeable persons, which is the team. Parent consent is recommended but not required. There are reasonable timelines. A complaint equals discrimination, and you go to the Office of Civil Rights. And there is no funding, but that doesn't mean we don't do anything with it. It just means the federal government doesn't fund it. And so that's really it. Thanks for all you do for our 504 students. If you have any 504 related questions, please let me know. Thanks a lot. And don't forget to also sign the form that's in the mailroom.